Welcome to Blissful Consults with yours truly, Dr. Cammy, a PhD licensed psychotherapist with special training in trauma-informed healthcare. Holly from California wrote in with a great question about working with her therapist. Let's see what Holly has to say. Dear Dr. Cammy, I went to a therapist who referred me to a psychiatrist for medication. When we first met, I told the therapist I was totally against medication. I was off-put when she brought it up a few weeks later. Am I overreacting, or is this a bad sign in the relationship? Should I switch therapists due to her recommending medication? This is a tricky one, Holly. Stay tuned to hear my response because this is definitely not as straightforward as you might think. Hello, my name is Dr. Cammy, and I am the founder and president of Bliss in Being. We offer cutting-edge psychotherapy and coaching for people who are ready to heal from the effects of chronic stress and trauma. I personally can help you move from the brink of burnout to holistic thriving. It is time for you to finally enjoy the life you've worked so hard to build, and I am here to help you make it happen. Let's get on to our question for today. Hi, Holly. Wow, this is an extremely important question, and there are multiple components to my answer. All of my questions about therapy center what's called the therapeutic alliance. I really can't answer any question about the relationship between a therapist and a client without first framing it in this really important concept. The therapeutic alliance is the working relationship between the client and the therapist. It is an absolutely essential aspect of successful therapy because, if you think about it, every single thing that occurs in therapy, it happens within the context of this relationship. You're sitting together, you're sharing, everything happens in that room between those people. Research shows that the therapeutic alliance consists of three essential elements. 1, therapist and client agree on the goals of treatment. 2, therapist and client have a shared understanding of how those goals will be met. And 3 is the bond and connection between the client and therapist. Whenever there's an issue between a client and a therapist, generally it comes down to a misunderstanding or a disagreement on one of these 3 areas in the therapeutic alliance. From the looks of your question, Holly, it sounds like you do not have a shared understanding with your therapist on how the goals for your treatment will be met. Your therapist sees medication as an option to meet your goals, and you do not. You might also be struggling with the bond between you and your therapist in light of the fact that you felt disrespected by her suggestion to consult with a psychiatrist for medication. So let's begin first with the relationship component. I would strongly suggest you talk to your therapist in a clear and honest way about her recommendation for medication and how it left you feeling. You could use the framework of the therapeutic alliance to organize and gather some of your thoughts. So for example, you might say to your therapist, when you suggested that I go for a medication assessment, I felt disrespected because I shared with you on session 1 that I was not interested in medication. Therapists are not only trained to handle conversations that are difficult, but we are also trained to invite those conversations. Our training includes this because therapy is often the only place where people can feel truly comfortable to share their unfiltered views and advocate for acknowledgement of their feelings. See how your therapist responds when you share your authentic expressions and feelings with him or her. Your therapist is human and may have forgotten that you made that comment during your first session. They may have assumed you changed your mind or some other oversight that any person, therapist or otherwise, could make. Now, On to your question about whether it is a bad sign that your therapist recommended you to seek a medication assessment. No, I do not think that this is inherently a bad sign. Therapists operate within an interprofessional modus operandi, meaning when individuals come to us with symptoms or distressing feelings that they want resolved, we need to think broadly about how to facilitate that healing. Healing doesn't just stop with us as the therapist. Some people make huge gains in making very small changes in their life, either individually or with a coach. They may never even need to see a therapist. Others are able to solve all of their problems with talk therapy alone. Some others might need a somatic-based therapy or a body-based approach in addition to talk therapy. And still others may need medication in conjunction with one or more healing approaches. When a therapist has identified that a client may benefit from an additional treatment, like medication, it is our ethical obligation to share that information with the client. If that includes a medication assessment, the therapist absolutely should share that information. Holly, more often than not, it's usually less about what someone says and more about how they say it. I completely understand and respect that medication is not something that you are open to right now. And I think a lot of your distrust in your therapist emerged from her dismissal of your stance on medication by bringing it up without addressing your concerns first. I would not rule out your current therapist simply based on the fact that he or she asked you to get a medication assessment. However, I would strongly suggest that you have a candid conversation about how the therapist communicated their thoughts to you and the ways that negatively impacted your relationship.